So let me begin here. Thank you for having me. Any church that would say, let's set aside some time and talk about how we can be more inclusive, how we can be more welcoming, is on the right path. And you really can't go wrong by talking about it and opening up to the community. So maybe, is there anyone here that saw the article and came from the article? Nice, good. Well, I'm going to very briefly, this is who I am. My name is Cathryn. I was raised in Walla Walla, Washington, in the Congregational Church. I went to high school, became a Christian, was very, very...
earnest.
What?
Earnest.
Yeah, I was earnest, and I was a pain in the, as a Christian, just, judgmental, and, this is how I had to look, and da-da-da-da-da. So I went off to college, and then the woman at my college, it was Whitworth, I went to Whitworth, and the chaplain of the school said, would you come talk to me one day? And I said, yeah, am I in trouble? So I went in, and she said, as I look around this campus, you have as many gifts for ministry as anyone I can see. Have you thought about being a minister? No, never thought of it. We're teachers and nurses. And she said, well, you might want to think about it. And I said, okay, so I prayed about it, and my boyfriend, high school sweetheart, was going to be a minister, so I thought, what do you think? Should we do it maybe together? And he said, yeah, that'd be cool. So we went off to Princeton Seminary, and we got married before we did, went off to Princeton Seminary, and came home. After that, we went to be ordained. And when you're ordained in the Presbyterian Church, you write a sermon, and you give it to a nice church committee. Well, I have always been a rabble-rouser, for sure. And so in my sermon, I said that we should consider talking about God as male and female because scripturally, the Holy Spirit is in Greek, feminine, and in Hebrew, neuter. So if we're going to be biblical, we're going to talk about God as male and female. Well, that went over like a fart in a spacesuit. In Wenatchee, Washington in 1979. Not good. So finally, my husband had gone into his room. They were done in 10 minutes. Sure, ordain him, love him. Me, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And I kept thinking to myself, don't cry, Cathryn, do not cry. And so finally they said, okay, we'll ordain her. So we went down to our first church was Southern California, a very fancy, wealthy church, and we created youth ministry out of nothing. There were 3 kids selling drugs to each other. Not kidding. And we created a youth group that was huge and did mission. That was what they did. They did mission, and it was amazing. And those kids are now doing things like in the UN, doing stuff around the world to make the world a better place. So then I went to Oregon, to First Presbyterian Church downtown Portland. It's an inner city church, and it was a horrible experience. I don't need to go into that. It was probably us as much as anyone. So I went to do corporate consulting, and in corporate consulting, I met this woman named Connie Brown. Well, it hit the fan because we fell in love. Had no idea. And I'm 69, I'm an old fart, and people in my age group, that's kind of how it happened. You fall in love, oh my. So then it really got ugly because I was seen as abandoning my family. Lots happened, but I decided this was the love of my life, this woman, Connie Brown. So we moved to Seattle. My children went with their father to Gig Harbor, and I cried every day for 1.5 years. And we fought for custody because we wanted equal custody. We didn't want to, just be, we knew they needed their daddy, and they did. They did. So we won. And so we moved down to Gig Harbor and we shared custody of these children they're now 41 and 37, turning 38 next weekend. And they're amazing. But they would tell you this: the greatest part of their growing up was having a lesbian mom and getting to go to this thing called Spirit of the Sound, the church I began. The reason I began the church was this. One day, we're living in Gig Harbor, and I'm happy as a clam because my children are coming to my house. And a letter came at 7:30 in the morning. And so I went to the door and looked at the letter. 7:30, a letter, signed for it. And Connie put her briefcase down and said, "I think I'll stay home today." Smart. She was very smart. She passed away, by the way, a year and a half ago. And she died after 5 years of dementia, which I walked her through the whole time. So I'm on the floor because the letter said, "Cathryn, you can now do whatever you want because you're no longer ordained in the Presbyterian Church." No phone call, no committee meeting, nothing. Just you're defrocked. It's over. If you want to hear this another way, I have a TED Talk, and it kind of tells this story too. So you just put in your Google search, Cathryn Cummings TED Talk, it comes right up. Only 14 minutes. So when I got up off the ground and crying, I said, "Okay, no." I believe I said this: "Hell no. I am not going to let the church tell me that I can't be a minister." So after a couple months, I decided I'm going to start an LGBT church because I don't want it to happen to anyone else what happened to me, to have the church betray you. No. Now, did I know what I was going to do and how I was going to do it? Absolutely not. I had no idea. None. Now, I don't know how you're going to do this to reach out to the community and get more young families and have university students coming across the street. But you're going to do it. You just don't know yet how. So we started Spirit of the Sound. Jane was president for 3 years, and Jane's straight. My favorite thing about Jane, so many things, but one of my favorite things is you would say to Jane, "Jane, now you're president of Spirit of the Sound, it's a gay church. Are you gay?" And Jane would say this: "Well, I'm flattered, but no." Jane lived in Washington. Kip lived in Florida. Kip heard about it from his nephew? Brother-in-law. And found out about it, wrote me checks. Thank you, God. We called him the angel from Florida. But he thought what we were doing was so amazing. It was the only thing like it in the country. There was nothing else going on. And in 1991, was it cool to be gay? Absolutely not. Today, it's just so cool. Back then, no. I went to many, many pastors and said, "Would you help us? Could you could write a check, or would you pray for us, or could we meet in your church?" Because we decided we didn't want a building. God has enough real estate. She doesn't need any more real estate. So we're a hermit crab church. We met in other churches. And we met in churches in Seattle and in Federal Way and in Tacoma. So when I got this idea to start the church, Connie was the one who kept saying, "Honey, if you're not going to do it, who's going to do it?" Okay. So we had an idea of 3 things: small groups, worship, and mission projects. So we did those all over. I'm going to tell you 3 stories tonight. And the reason I'm going to tell you stories is because Jesus told stories. And this is, now they say that everyone is partial to one part of their Trinity, and we're a little Trinity tonight. But you either are close to God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit. That's the one, you feel close. I'm a Jesus person, always have been. But this is a picture that I had framed in the 70s. It's an old lithograph, and it's of Jesus talking to the woman at the well. Because this was the longest conversation he had with anyone in the Bible. Woman at the well. People don't know that. So he always spent time reaching out to the persons, just like you're doing. You're doing exactly what Jesus said to do. So here are my 3 stories. 1, in the beginning, gay, lesbian, bi, trans. Now, I could go into all kinds of things about what LGBTQI, I'm going to just talk about Q for a second. Those of us in my age group don't have a love affair with the word queer because it's kind of like, you know. Well, people who are 40 and under want to be called queer. So we need to just get over that. And we could talk about gender, we could talk about all kinds of things, but just to leave that. Your homework is to find out what LGBTQIA means. And if you want to know, walk across campus and ask one of the people they know over there. So they would rather go to a bar than they would to a church, because the church has been beaten up on them. And they know those 7 passages in the Bible, those are called the clobber passages, because they have been used. Can I have a Bible? They've been used to clobber gays and lesbians with. So they're called the clobber passages. So it was gay pride. And these people in my church, Microsoft, Boeing, great folks, we'll march in the parade with you. Sure. Night before, phone call 1, can't do it. Phone call 2, nope. Phone call 3, can't do it. Why? We could lose our jobs. And they could have in 1997 when I was doing this. My ministry was 95 to 2005. And in that 10 years, there came much more of every flavor denominations, churches that were welcoming. So we had the gay pride parade, and no one's gonna march. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and Connie says to me, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? Okay, so we get the 2 children that we have. Would you consider marching in the gay pride parade? What's the gay pride parade? Because we had not told them, because their father would have a litter of kittens if he knew we were taking them there. Their father's a pastor. Okay, so we went and we passed out flyers about a service we're going to have at the gay bar, because they would rather go to a gay bar than come to a church. In this service, when I called the bar, sir, I'd like to rent the church for Sunday morning. Why? I thought we'd have a worship service. Will anyone buy alcohol? Well, yes, there'll be 1 glass of wine, that's called communion. And he said, will anyone buy beer? Probably my wife will. Yeah, actually. So she did. So what we did was we had it in this bar, and we got there early to sweep up cigarette butts and stuff, and we had our kids with us, of course, and we had Mama, the drag queen from LA that we flew in. Now, in 1997, drag queens were scandalous. This church was, I was scandalous. So she had 9 changes. And it was amazing. It was fabulous. So from that, we learned you got to think outside the box. Think outside the box. Remember that. Second story, Chuck. I'm preaching in Everett. I preached a lot. If I had a PhD, I've kind of given myself one, on faith-based homophobia. Am I right? That's what it is. 30 years I've been working on this, so I kind of gave myself a PhD. I don't really, but I joke at that. I went to Everett to preach. I met Chuck, a sweet little man in his 70s. White hair, pastel sport coat, dead giveaway. And he came up to me after I'd preached, and he said, could we have lunch? I said, absolutely, love to. Go to lunch, and this is his opening line. Today was the day I was going to kill myself. But I thought I'd come to church first. And then you preached. So I took his hands, and I said, Chuck, don't kill yourself. Come to my church. So he did. And he got in a small group with lovely other people. And he thrived in that small group and in our church. And as time went by, we were talking, and he said, I had a partner for 50 years. Really, Chuck? Yeah, and when he died, the family didn't even want me to come to the service, so I didn't go. And he kind of got teary and he said, yeah, I don't sleep very well. I said, hey, guess what? We're going to throw you a funeral. And he said, I would never ask you to do that. I said, you didn't ask. I offered. So sure enough, we went. Were you there? Yeah. We went to the graveyard. And the women brought umbrellas and the men brought flowers. We are a gay community. So, and a woman who has the voice of an angel sang an aria that went right over Jimi Hendrix's grave, and it was amazing. After that, Chuck said, I want to take everyone to breakfast. And I said, no, very poor man. No, Chuck. Cathryn, everyone to breakfast. Okay, Chuck, let's go. So we went to breakfast. After that, we all went home, our jobs and stuff, and I saw him at church on Sunday and said, Chuck, how are you? And he said, I had not slept more than 4 hours since he died years ago. And after that service, I slept for 19 hours. One story. Next story. Ron and Gwen, a sweet, lovely married couple. You would have loved them. 2 children. One day, Ron finally says to his wife, Gwen, I'm gay. Say what? I'm gay. We have 2 children. I know that. I'm gay. So, upheaval. So he says, I'm going to this church called Spirit of the Sound. There's a funny minister. You might want to meet her. So we went out for a meal. Gwen's a college vice president. And she says, I don't even know what to say to my people, my friends. I don't know what to say. I'm embarrassed. And I said, we talked about it. And she said, I haven't even told my mother. I said, give me your phone. She lives in Iowa. We called her mother. I remember after the lunch, she had a little kind of Mount Vesuvius of Kleenex just in front of her. Very, very elegant woman. And so she said, I don't know how to do this. I said, well, I'll walk you through it. I didn't know what I was doing. I'll walk you through it. So they said, we want to have a service of reconciliation and divorce. Well, of course you do. We want to have it in the church. Well, of course you do. So we wrote the service. And we're going to have vows for the rest of their lives. They faced one another, vows for the rest of their lives. Then they did this thing that was so cool. They, you know how you light 2 candles to 1 in a wedding? They lit 1 to 2. And then, because he was a gay man, he had 100 candles on the communion table. Hello? Another pastels, burnt coat, 100 candles. Hello? So, and I said, if you have anything you'd like to reconcile in your life, come forward. Every single person came forward. My daughter came forward, and she said to me after the service, I had to keep blowing out candles because there were only 100, and there were lots more than 100 people there. So everyone lit a candle. Nothing was said, by the way. It was just profound silence. My daughter said, Mom, if we could have done that after you and Dad got divorced, it would have really helped me. Sweetheart, I would have given my right arm to have done that. Your father doesn't talk to me. Still doesn't, by the way, 34 years later. So, here's a couple, Christian couple, that tried to do it right. God bless them. And they gave this amazing experience of how to do divorce well. We need more examples of that. So, I could tell stories from now until tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give you a charge. And before I do that, I want to say this. The church has messed up so royally on almost every single issue in history that this is no exception. Slavery. Now, maybe you know that Philadelphia is the dividing line where Presbyterians were south Congregationalists were north, and Harriet Tubman was free when she got to the Congregationalists. True story. I know a lot about Harriet Tubman. Women right to vote, church, no way. Now, it always was the UCC, always, who was different and stood up for justice. An ordination of women in the 50s, most churches, absolutely not. I wasn't ordained until 79, and still it was kind of a big deal. Civil rights. You know, they had pictures of Hitler on the many, many Lutheran communion tables. So Hitler was embraced by the church. And today, for the last 30 years, it's been LGBTQIA. And I've been the lightning rod, or one of them. And many other pastors met me, came to my house at 11 o'clock at night, knocked on the door, and I'd go, Connie always said, "Oh, I'm going to go to the door, honey." "Okay, dear." So she'd let them in, and pastors would say, "We've heard your story. I don't want to go through what you went through." So they stayed closeted. Okay, God bless you. I understand. But if I had a wish for this church, it is this. My wish for this church, and I believe this is what God's calling you to, is that you will become the badass church in Eastern Washington who has a big, wide open heart that is here for capital E everyone. And you can shorten that to say, be the badass church with a big heart. That's fine. But what you don't know is this. What I learned when I would serve communion out of my chalice, I didn't bring it because I was afraid it would get broken, and I don't know what I'd do if it got broken. But I had a chalice made that said, "God is wildly in love with you." There are people within a mile of this church that could be LGBTQIA or not, that don't believe that. They don't believe that God is wildly in love with them. So you got to go find them. And it's the most fun to go do that because they are waiting to hear. You just have to go into some sorority houses and say, "We'd love to have you come to our church." And then when they walk in that door, you love on them? Oh my gosh, you love on them. Or to the preschools and say, "We would just love some young families," and then make people feel so at home. What people want to do is walk out of a church, and this church in particular, and say, "I felt so loved here. I got to come back." That's what we're going for. And that's what in my little Spirit of the Sound church happened. People would come forward for communion, and I would serve them out of that, and they would just sob. "You mean God does? I'm not an abomination? I'm not a spawn of Satan? What?" Because that's what the church has been telling me. One mama told me this. My son went and talked to the pastor, and the pastor told him what he thought he was, and he went into the sanctuary and blew his brains out. And the mama told me that. So, you can do this. This is not hard, because Eastern Washington needs a bright light, a big heart. I want to introduce you to Jane and to Kip, because Jane and Kip are the only straight couple I know that came out of Spirit of the Sound. And they're just a couple recently, so we're talking senior love, which is great stuff. So I think it's Kip next, is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Now here's.
I'm on the mic.
Okay, good.
Are
Good,
you
good.
on the mic? We're on the mic right here.
The mic. There's the mic.
Yeah. Mic. Great. Thank you and welcome, everyone. It's fun to get to the other side of the state, since when you fly from Tampa, Florida, where I moved from, and you guys granted me asylum in this state, it's a pretty long way, and there's a lot of hay fields and wheat fields. Oh my gosh. As Cathryn said, my name is Kip Eldridge. I use the pronouns he and him, except when I'm in New Orleans doing a half marathon in my kilt, and it's like, who dat? Yeah, okay, we got that. I'm getting older. I know that. I understand it. I love it. And it's easily, I forget things, so we sort of wrote things down yesterday on the way across. But what's interesting is I can forget where I was an hour ago, what I had lunch, breakfast. What I have not forgotten, and what seems like yesterday, was walking into the Spirit of the Sound for the first time and feeling Jesus' presence. And it's pretty special. You might have felt this before, you may not have, but maybe it's the essence of what Jesus wants us to do when we go out to the community. But when I walked into that church, it was 1996. We're trying to figure out the years. I was with my then wife and brother-in-law, who lives in Seattle. We go into Cathryn's church. First impressions are the most important. I think most of you know that. And when you walk into a church, and again, I'm repeating myself, but I haven't forgotten that feeling of unconditional love. I was the stranger, and I was welcomed. So when somebody walks through your door, what do they see and feel based on where they are on that faith journey? Are you going to meet those expectations, not just the first time, but the second time, the third time, and the fourth time, because you want it to be a habit that they come back to your church? At the time, I lived 3,000 miles away in Tampa and was part of a vibrant United Methodist church. But I knew immediately after seeing Cathryn, the music, the people, that I wanted to be part of this church. So over the ensuing 10 years or thereabouts, we would go to Seattle at least once or twice a year, sometimes on business, sometimes to see my brother-in-law. And I always made it down to see the Spirit of the Sound because that's where I felt at home. Because it was that journey that you have that affirms, and then you question, and you go back and forth. When I walked into Cathryn's church, and it was 3 different venues, I felt it. I felt that love and the affirmation that this is where I'm supposed to be. Now, ministers always ask you for 3 things, right? Time, talent, and ties. Well, I'm 3,000 miles away, so 1 out of 3 wasn't bad. And I tried the best I could at the time to support SOS financially because I believed in the mission of a church that loved everyone. Fast forward 20 years. Cathryn is still one of my spiritual advisors. And at the memorial service, we reacquainted all of these people that I had met back in, Connie's memorial service. I meet all of these people, and once we finally figured out who we were, why we were, where we were, I remember you. We were 20, 30 years older, but still had the same love because we have grown. Because I think that church and friends should not be stagnant. They need to grow. Things that don't grow don't survive. In the ensuing years, I was part of a pretty vibrant church, United Methodist Church in Tampa, but there was no sign on the door, as I saw it here, that actually welcomed everyone. And the sign on the door is great, but I noticed we did not have one in Tampa, but they said, we're affirming, we're welcoming, we're all of this. But because of who I am and where my heart is, the subtle way that people reacted when people came in that were different, it was like, why are you here? And fast forward, it's 2015. I am now on the board of a group called Reconciling Ministries Network, which was a national organization for the full inclusion of LGBTQIA people. I was the only non-member of the Methodist Church that was on the board. The board requirements is that you had to have so many gay, lesbian, trans, I's. I was the white heterosexual. But we all on the board had a passion for the church and the mission of the church to make it all-inclusive. There was a convocation in San Antonio in 2015. There were 700 to 800 affirming progressive Methodists in that room, in that sanctuary. I think I took 2,000 pictures because that's what I was relegated to do, was to just take pictures of people, of banners, of the excitement, of the highs, of the lows. And I left that place on a high. A year later, the annual United Methodist Convention met in Portland. And not only did they not adopt the measures that our group, these 900 people that had nothing but love for the church and everyone else, they not only did not adopt our measures, they backtracked and hurt the community that all they wanted to do was to walk in the door and be loved. So a lot of you have probably been reading, currently with post-Portland, the schism within the church. 20% have left, and they've formed another conservative, non-inclusive, global Methodist church. A lot of congregations are really split because once you meet your neighbor and you love your neighbor and you find out they're a little different than you, they're still your neighbor. You still love them. And it's really been hard, but one church says all are invited. The other church says you're not. So when you're not seen, heard, or listened to, you don't come back. And it's that continuity of coming back time and time again. I left out one note I saw here. When I went into the sanctuary with the 700 Methodists cheering and chanting and clapping, I was taken back to 1996. And I felt it again. I said, wow, Jesus is here. It's affirming, it's for everybody. So when I walk into a church today, I like to be welcomed, I like to be seen, talked to, and if I come back a second time because I feel like there's something there, I'd like to see it a second time. How many churches put up a flag once a year or once a month because it's Pride Month? By the way, yes, these are my Brooks Pride shoes. And I wear them with the kilt because if one doesn't start a conversation, something else does. And then by the end of the talk, we realize that we have more in common than our differences. And the church today has more of a mission, I think, than ever before in every community across the country. And it's just to love everyone unconditionally, as Cathryn Church did. And that's why I was a part of it, and so happy for it.
Who took my notes?
Oh, I did. But you're smarter and younger. You don't need them.
Now you know why I love him. Great. I get to follow Cathryn and Kip. Thank you both so much. I'm going to work from my notes, too, because like Kip, I'm old. I'm just not as old, as he likes to say. So I'm going to tell you a little bit. I'm Jane Taylor. My pronouns are she, her. And I want to tell you a little bit about my love life. I was dating this really cool guy. I was about 40, dating this really cool guy. And I thought, man, maybe this might be the one. Kind of like him. And I was coming home from his house one evening, and we'd had a conversation where I realized, you know what, this is not going to work with Lance. We are not going to be that couple. And I was sad, and I remember as I'm driving home thinking and asking God, okay, I'm 40-something, why have I not met the man of my dreams? And I literally, and this is sounding woo-woo, but it's absolutely the truth, I literally had to pull the car over to the side of the road. I was crying. And I wasn't saying, God, why haven't I met the man? It was a question. And God said, you know that woman you met yesterday at that fundraising event? Call her. That was Cathryn. I had no idea why, but I called and I said, God would like us to have coffee. And she said, well, you know, I drink tea, but okay. And we got together for tea, and she said, tell me your story. And so I told her my story, and I said, I'm 40. I've never been married, haven't had a serious relationship to speak of in recent years, and I'm seeking something, and I don't know what it is, some kind of sense of community. And she said, well, I'm building a community. It's a gay community, so I'm not sure how it's going to help you, but, you know, you are welcome. Now, there's the story in the Bible about Mary and Elizabeth. Mary is pregnant with Jesus. She approaches her kinswoman Elizabeth, who's pregnant with John the Baptist, and the baby leaps in Elizabeth's womb, recognizing Jesus. And that's how it felt when Cathryn said, I'm building a community. It's like, oh, I have to be there. I have to be a part of this. And here I am, a straight person. And I will tell you that if you want to worship with people where worship is wonderful, worship with people that other churches have thrown out, and they're there because they want to worship, not because they want to look good, not because somebody says you should go to church, but because they are really highly motivated. And we had a mountaintop experience for 10 years. It was absolutely amazing. So that's how Cathryn and I met each other. And then when Spirit of the Sound ended, I wasn't highly motivated to find another church, because when you've met the love of your life in a church, it's kind of hard to go back to something else. Now, I would tell people this, and invariably someone would say, oh, you should come to my church. You would love my church. Okay, thank you. And then they kind of think, okay, well, how can we get her involved with our church? Well, the thing is, I'm not the one a church wants right now. I'm a 68-year-old woman. What your church, and others want for continuity and for, I won't say for vibrancy, because plenty of vibrant 68-year-old people or so in this room, but for continuity and for growth is to find younger people and to find families. And you've alluded to that already, so I know that. I don't know how you find families exactly, but what I want to do is tell you a little bit about events that Kip and I have been to recently, where there's been just an incredible welcome for everyone. We went to a few church services. Kip and I have reconnected at Connie's memorial service. He's since been, he's been divorced, and we are now a couple, and that's pretty cool. And so when Cathryn says, for only romance to come out of Spirit of the Sound, the only straight romance, that's us. Oh, Cathryn set me up with 11 people before Kip. No, seriously, 11 people. 11 men, yes, 11 men. So we've been to a few churches. We've looked around. They were great. Lots of people our age. That was great. But then we went to one that was a progressive Methodist church in our community in West Seattle, because they were having a drag tea. And I thought, well, that sounds like fun. And Kip said, I'm all over that. So we went. A room about this size, jammed with 60 or 70 adults and about 20 or 30 kids, little kids, at little tables having their own little tea with their sandwiches and their cookies, and then there was a big dress-up box for them, and they all got to pull out stuff and dress up and put the hats on and parade around. Then they had an amazing, amazing drag queen who is also a seminary student at a Methodist seminary who is completely out, and she spoke. And she's going to be ordained next year, first one in the newly formed Methodist Church. And she, as Cathryn would say, preached the cover off the book. She was amazing. And the amount of, yes. Oh, her name, Penny Cost. That was her drag name as a preacher. Thank you, Kip. Absolutely. She was fantastic. But what struck me was in this room, everyone was accepted. There was so much joy. She preached, and I mean in the full kilt. The wig alone had its own zip code. It was just, she was massive and huge and wonderful. And people cheered. And I love that you clap after speaking, people that speak. I'm not asking for that, of course, but... Oh, no. But people cheered, and how often do you hear people cheering in church, except perhaps here? So that impressed me. That was a place where it was so clear that the love of Jesus was there, and we were welcomed, and everybody was welcomed, and everybody was walking around talking to everybody else's tables. So that was amazing. The other experience that we had recently, and we do other things as a couple besides go to drag shows, but we went to we volunteered as an usher at a drag show on Friday night at a local entertainment venue. And again, there were so many people there. There were probably 100 people in this small venue, and they were cheering on the drag queens, and everybody was loving on everybody and throwing dollar bills and stuff. And by contrast, there happened to be a woman there who was supervising the volunteers who was not at all on board with any of this. And so it was palpable. You would walk in, she was the first person you'd see, and people were coming in and they were excited, and I mean, she was not friendly and not welcoming. Then you got in the room where other people were, and everybody was friendly and welcoming. So it was interesting just to see that dynamic. So the places where Kip and I have recently seen welcome have been at drag shows. I thought that was interesting. I also have the privilege of serving on the DEI committee, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at the City of Bellevue Utility. That's who I work for, which is basically the water company. We have one transgendered person who works there, several gay people, several people of color. And the reason that we do is because we make sure that we put, when we do a recruiting table somewhere, that there is someone who matches the demographic of the people that we would like to recruit. And one of the transgender people said to me, I will not work somewhere. I don't care how much they say, yes, we're open, yes, we unless I see someone that looks like me, I won't work there. So I think that's a really important thing. Unless they know that you mean it by bringing people in, they won't come. So how do you get gay people and young families? I'm the last person to ask about that. I'm not either of those demographics, so I don't know, but here's what I do know. My friends who said, oh, well, you can come to my church, you'd love my church, did not stop to do what Cathryn did, which is to say, tell me your story. What are you looking for? And to me, that's the greatest thing that you can do to people is hear them, pay attention to what they say, and then meet their need, as opposed to creating a program and going out and offering it to them if it doesn't meet their need. So I want to say I love this church. I love the people that I've met, and I love that your response to Cathryn. And like Cathryn, I think you guys are going to knock the socks off this community. Good luck to you.
So we have a few minutes. Questions? Is there any questions? I'm gonna add. You know, Kip and Jane, we're kind of a little trinity. You never do it alone. You know, I didn't create Spirit of the Sound. There were times I wanted to quit for sure, and Connie would say, "Hell no! Who's gonna do it? You know, who's gonna reach out to these people? Remember so and so." One of our gigs was, if you're going to kill yourself, you got to come sleep at my house. So they did. And one night, this time of year, Tyler came home, and he walked in, knocked on the bedroom door, and he goes, Mom, Anne's asleep on the couch. Was she going to kill herself? Yeah. I think I'll take down the bloody axe I have hanging for Halloween, just because it's a little bit too graphic. I said, yeah, good idea, babe, do that. So what we need to do is to work together. And the more fun you're having, the more people will come. Drag queens. What's fun? What can you do that's fun? How can you be specifically inviting? We liberals don't do that very well. You know, I'm not talking about the 4 spiritual laws. I'm talking about saying, you might be lonesome for your church from home in wherever home is for these college students. If you come to our church, you might get invited to dinner. And so when you see 2 college students, what do we have? We got tomato soup. They don't care. They haven't been in a home in a long time. They're in a ghetto for 18 and 22-year-olds. Being invited to anyone's house is like a big deal. So invite college students over. If, you know, today we have a nursery. You know, build it and they will come. And these lovely women have their twin girls in the nursery. So you need to have a nursery so that when people bring their babies, they say, oh yeah, of course. So, you know, you gotta have fun. And if you're not having fun, they're not gonna have fun. So that said, are there any questions for Jane or Kip or me? Yes.
Did you continue your ministry?
We did not, and we didn't because I didn't want to be a gay church. And so what happened in 2005 was those folks in Spirit of the Sound often went to other churches, a Lutheran, Baptist, Mormon, Catholic, and they became salt in primarily straight churches. And some folks didn't go because church is kind of boring compared to Spirit of the Sound. I mean, I wore tutus, and I mean, we had unequivocally the best music in the Puget Sound. And that's because all the gay guys were kicked out, and I got them! I got them! You know, and they would come in, and this is a moment I'll never forget. The night after Matthew Shepard was killed, I walked into our church on Capitol Hill where we were meeting, and there were 3 guys sitting down at the piano singing the song they'd just written about Matthew Shepard's death. And it kind of became the gay Christian ballad. And we went to a big conference where over 1,000 people were, and when Jane and others sang this song called Let Freedom Ring, it was a standing ovation for a long time. So I never said, you know, I want a great music team. God brought this music team. I didn't know. So you don't know who God's going to bring through that door. But you just got to play with it. And I promise you, you're going to have fun. You just don't know what's going to happen. So we ended because the church was then ready for my hooligans to go infiltrate other churches. Any other questions or comments? Or I'm 100% sure, 100% sure this church is on the edge of a really great future. I mean, there are things you should be really proud of. You're the oldest church in town. They don't know that. Young families, they don't want to be a part of these groovy-doo-dah non-denominational. They want to be a part of a church like this. They really do. They want to be a part of a church like yours. You just have to go out there and say, did you know that we were established in this time? You know, bullet points, not 5 hours of conversation, and we would love to have you come. People want to be asked, you know, like, we would love to have you. Please come. We would love, you know, I'll have you over for lunch. We'll have some soup and some, yeah. You know, people want to be invited. Just invite them. And then when they come, love on them. Love on them. And I promise you, it's going to be a great adventure. And whoever gets to be their pastor, you're an amazing flock. And you just need to kind of get those shepherd crooks out and bring a few more in. And then when they come in, love them up, and then bring more. I mean, this gorgeous lesbian couple here is a great place to start. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm going to end with one story. And that is just because that's how Jesus taught. It's all about stories. And a story I want to tell you is, I don't know what story I want to tell you. Do you have any ideas, Jane? Okay. Right, get my mic. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. I think I'll tell you a story about Connie. Connie was my wife for 32 years. When she died, they named a day after her in Tacoma, Washington, because of her work with domestic violence. She was the head of the oldest shelter west of the Mississippi. She worked with homelessness. She was the head of the homeless shelter for 5 years. She did affordable housing for 12 years. She was in a program at Harvard of people doing cutting edge stuff in affordable housing. And she started the LGBTAQA nonprofit in Tacoma. And she also was my wife. But she had a passion for people that no one else wanted. And when we would see homeless people, she would always say the same thing. And that she worked with them every day. She would say, I wonder what their life has been like. I am sure I can't fathom what they have seen. Rather than the judgment, rather than, why are they on our streets? And there were many, many times, when I was ready to just forget Spirit of the Sound. There were death threats. We had to have a police officer come and make sure guns weren't bringing because they were going to shoot me. But it was Connie who kept saying, we need this. And it was the UCC, it was a ministry of the UCC. And I didn't get the support from the UCC I needed or wanted. I'll just be honest. But I got support from my wife. And we need someone who believes in us. And the next pastor that you hire, I want it to be a man or a woman who believes in you and that you can change the world. Because there's nothing stopping you from changing the world. And Connie whispered that in my ear over and over. We can do this, honey. We can do this. We can have people sleep on our couch. I'll never forget the first time we were in Bible study on Friday night. Jane came down from Seattle every Friday night to our small group. And someone said that they were thinking about killing themselves. And so Connie just quietly left the table. I thought, well, thanks a lot, babe. You're leaving. She went upstairs and she wrote out a contract. She's a businesswoman. I will not kill myself until we meet again next Friday. And then she had everyone sign it. So it was a contract. We were saying to this person who was at the end, we're standing beside you. And that's all anyone needs. I'm standing beside, I've got your back. I'm there for you. And that's what so many people out there need. There are kids, there are students within feet of here that are thinking about killing themselves. And there are young families that need grandma and grandpa because they live in Texas or they live, in outer Slavovia. I don't know. So you can be family. And this church can do this. It's going to take courage. It's going to take fun. It might take a drag queen or two or craziness. But I absolutely believe, and I mentioned to Jan, I'll be your East Coast consultant. I'm a West Coast person that lives in the East Coast. I don't know why, but my daughter and son both live there, and so I moved there. It's not the same. I cried my way into Seattle on Friday, just sobbed coming in. A woman said, are you okay? No, I'm not okay. This is Seattle, this is my home. So whatever I can do to help you. I know Kip and Jane, when they're not at drag queen shows, they would answer the phone. But if we can be of any help to you, and you're getting, we've tried this and tried that, it's not working, please call us. Please let us help you become the badass church in Eastern Washington who has the big, wide open heart that is here for capital E everyone. That's what you're going to become. Okay? Yeah, done.